Hi everyone, welcome again to Module 9. This module is, what we're doing is we're taking all the information that we've really been building, right? So the first thing I had you do is write a nutrition log, and the very first part of that nutrition log was just to record everything you ate and how it made you feel. I really wanted you to focus in on how certain foods are serving you, because again, I don't believe that there is one same or appropriate diet for everybody out there. And again, diet is just a word for everything that you consume. So it's not just necessarily a diet to lose weight. It could be a diet on Doritos and chocolate bars, right? It's just the things that you put in your body. So the first thing I had you do is to create a nutrition log and how it made you feel. And then we kind of circled back around to that and looked at that nutrition log in terms of nutritional content. I didn't start there. And the reason why I didn't start there is because I really wanted you to focus in on how the foods that you eat specifically for you are making you feel a certain way. Because again, not everybody is the same, and not everybody should be eating the same diets out there. And the problem is when a fad diet comes along, then everybody kind of jumps on the bandwagon, and it may not be the right diet for them. So I really want you to zero in on how food is serving you. From there, then, we did analyze it. So we came back 2 weeks later, and I asked you to analyze it. I asked you to analyze what it looks like in terms of calories and what it looks like in terms of carbohydrates and fats and protein. So you can really kind of see what your diet is comprised of in the terms of nutrients and calories. So then what we did last week is I led you through a really long process of specifically what nutrition is, and kind of a really blanket nutrition program about what certain macronutrients do for you in your life. And what I tried to lead you through is the idea that everybody is different, and I wanted to have you create your own nutritional plan based on your own goals and what you know about you and your body and the way that you may or may not require specific food groups. Okay, because again, everybody is different, and I don't believe that there's a uniform health plan or a uniform nutrition plan for everybody. I think it should be very different depending on you and your needs and your likes and your goals. And so what I did is I gave you a nutrition plan, and then in that nutrition plan, we went through a pretty long, drawn-out process of trying to figure out, based on you, based on your goals, whether you wanted to kind of manipulate your nutrition to change your body weight, either up or down. And then we came out with some numbers, and those numbers were how many calories you would need and how many carbohydrates and fats and proteins to be able to reach your goals. So the calories would be able to reach your goals, again, either manipulating your body weight up or down or just staying the same. I was not in any way encouraging you to change your weight if you're very comfortable with the way you are. And then, so you came out with a number of calories, recommended calories per day that you would need to either reach your goals or to keep your body weight the same. And then we broke it down even further to how many grams of carbohydrates you would need, how many grams of protein you would need, and how many grams of fat you would need to be able to reach those goals. Or again, the goal may be just staying the same, but that would be meeting your goals to stay the same rather than we figured out calories and carbohydrates and fats and protein. And then I even invited you, if you wanted to break it down even more so you would know per meal. Again, for me, I just like to know per meal. I have like really ballparks. I know if I'm eating so many calories and I've got so many proteins and fats in each meal, then I'm good. That's all I need to know. So I did invite you to break it down even more. But what I wanted you to do, again, is come out with numbers, calories, carbohydrates, proteins, and fats that you need per day to reach your goal. Again, one of those goals being that you could be staying the same. And then I asked you to do it for a fictitious client, because again, we're looking at this class from two lenses: the lens of looking at your own health and well-being, but also the lens of looking at what it would look like if you were working with or coaching or trying to inspire somebody in your field, this being your vocation, to be able to lead somebody else through, right? Not just your own lens. So if you're perfectly fine and you already have a pretty good nutrition plan, then the challenge was to create this fictitious person of a client that you would be working with that may be very different from you, and how you would figure out all of those things based on them. And I asked you to be really specific about what this kind of fictitious person would look like: their activity level, their vocation, how much they moved, how old they were, the gender, and what their goals are. Do they want to lose weight? Do they want to gain weight? Do they want to get in shape? Whatever their goals are. Okay. And so what we're doing now is, you came up with some numbers, but the numbers are just numbers. So what we're going to do this week is we're really going to then look at creating a menu plan, how you would figure out a menu plan that would meet those goals. So again, last week I gave you a very kind of as much as in-depth as I can do in 1 week nutrition plan about what different macronutrients do. But again, so now how do we figure out how they fit in our diet? How do we know if what we're eating is really matching up to what we should be eating? So that's what this week is about. This week is about taking everything that you've learned so far and then really beginning to put it into work to find out exactly how you would do it, how you would figure out a menu plan for yourself, how you would figure out a menu plan for someone else. So the very first part of that is learning how to read food labels, because you can't figure out how to create a menu that has a specific amount of calories or carbohydrates or fats or proteins if you don't know what's in that food. Okay, so we're going to talk a lot about how to read labels. Now, if you are eating foods that don't have labels, not everything has a label, it's easy to look up that information. Now you can Google anything, right? So you could take an apple and Google calories in an apple or carbohydrates in an apple, and you should be able to find that information very easily. But I do want to go over how to read a nutrition label, because even foods that aren't labeled have these components in them, and it's really important to be able to know how to read a label so you know what's going in your body. And then the other thing is it's also really important to know the misinformation that's out there, and to know, or at least know how to find the information around certain foods. Okay, so again, what you should have done is you should have completed your nutrition plan for yourself and your client. So you should have calories per day, carbohydrates, grams per day. Again, so we switched at the end, we switched everything from calories to grams, because grams are a lot easier to count. Protein, grams per day or meal, and then fat, grams per day or per meal. Okay, so let me just talk a little bit. You had a reading about the history of nutrition labeling. So I really want to talk about that just really briefly. I didn't want to overwhelm you with the reading because I know there was a lot of information in there. I didn't expect you to pick up every piece of information in there, but I really wanted you to get the general idea that, first of all, we didn't used to label food. I mean, it wasn't even until 1990 that they even started to put that in process. And people could claim anything. I said this before in one of the recordings. People could claim anything on a label because we didn't have any requirements. We didn't have any guidelines. So it's really important to understand that. It's also important to understand how the guidelines came into being, and also what the thought process was in being able to create the labels. And also understanding that there were some industries that had a lot to lose when they were beginning to label food, because if a food looked really horrible in its labeling, people were going to stop eating it, or at least reduce their consumption of eating it. And so a lot of industries had a lot of money to lose. And so there was a lot of lobbying too. So there was money being kind of thrown into the lobbying, into the groups of how we're going to really figure out how to label food. So it's just really important to understand, and it's also important to understand the misinformation. So one of the things that I do want to talk about, because, and I don't know if you picked this up in the reading or not, but meat and dairy products are under different guidelines than the USDA. And so when they were going through the whole process of trying to figure out labeling, the meat and dairy industry did, in the end, acquiesce to have nutrition labeling put on their products. However, the front label remained under the jurisdiction of another organization. So what does that mean? The reason why that's so important, and I want to bring up this example, is the front label on meat and dairy is based on weight. It's not based on nutritional content. So, and meat and dairy tends to have a lot of water in it. And so the more water that's in it, the less accurate it is. And I don't know if you've cooked any ground meat lately, you end up with, some meat and actually a fair amount of water. And so they've actually started injecting water into meat because it makes it heavier. And then therefore, based on the weight, they can say it's less fat because it's based on the weight. So what do I mean by that? If you look at a front label, and this is an example, and again, they're all labeled different. I just kind of picked a mid-range one. If you look at a front label of ground beef where it says it's 85% lean and 15% fat, you would think that that means that there's 15% fat in it. But again, that's based on weight. If you actually turn it over, and the picture over here on the right is the actual label. If you actually turn it over and look at the calories from fat per calories in what it is, it's well over half fat. I mean, well over half fat. It's like, so if you look at this, you can see the calories, total calories for a serving size is 240. Calories from fat is 150. So we're talking about 62% fat. And again, I'm not saying don't eat meat. That's not my message at all. But what I'm saying is, if you now have those numbers that you're trying to hit, and your numbers say that you can have so many grams of fat, and yet you're being very misled by the front of a label, it's really important to know that for meat and dairy, you really need to go to the back label to get honest labeling. Okay, so again, these are just some of the tricks about how we get misled in what we're eating. So it's really important to know how to read a food label. It's the same thing for milk. When you look at milk, and again, I'm just giving you an example, and I'm not saying don't drink milk at all, but I'm just saying understand what's in it, because this is 2% reduced fat milk. You would think that means that there's 2% fat in that milk. But if you look at the calories, it's actually 130 calories per serving, and we have total fat is 5 grams. You know that 1 gram of fat is 9 calories, so 4 times 5, so 45 calories of the 130 is fat. So we're talking about 33% fat. And again, I'm not saying don't eat milk, drink milk. I'm not saying don't eat meat. I'm just saying when you are trying to figure out how those things figure in your diet, it's really important to understand what is really comprising them. Okay, so again, it's just important to know how to read a food label and to really understand that the front labeling on a lot of products isn't necessarily the truth. And so it's important to figure out how to read a nutrition label. So what you'll find on packaged foods, again, is you're going to find almost always on a packaged food, there'll be something called nutrition facts. And in that label, there'll be a couple things. There'll be all the mathematical calories, fat, carbohydrates, protein, some of the vitamins, the important vitamins in that. And then there'll also be an ingredients list. Okay, now the ingredients list is really important to know that the way ingredients are listed is in order of how much they are in that thing. So in other words, the biggest order of nutrients is going to be first. So when we're looking at this label, water again is just water. So you can tell sugar is like the biggest ingredient or the most present ingredient in this food. And then, by the way, corn syrup is also just a different type of sugar, which they'll do a lot, is they will take a lot of different types of sugar and put it under a different name so it looks like it's not so high. But if you look at the first, I don't know, 4 or 5 ingredients in a food, those are pretty much the highest ingredients of what you're going to be eating in that food. So it's really important to pay attention to that. Another thing to consider is if it goes on so long and you can't even pronounce some of the stuff in it, then there's a lot of preservatives in there that may or may not be healthy for you. It's also important to know, you'll see those parentheses where it says vegetable oil, and then it says canola, high oleic, sunflower, corn oil. So when you have something with parentheses, it's just telling you what's in that thing that they just mentioned. So a lot of times the parentheses will go way down a list, and you'll actually, just by the way that the parentheses are listed, you're actually getting something further down the list that might not look so bad because it's further down the list, and it's really pretty high on the ingredient list. So it's really important to look at the ingredients list. At least look at the first 4 or 5 things that's in that food, and you can really tell kind of what you're eating. And like for instance, this, I don't even know what it was, but it's got some very high sugar content in that. Okay, so then also there's kind of new format labels and old format labels, and so it's important to know that there are differences. They're not that big of a difference, but they do kind of highlight some things, which I really like. So on each label, they'll tell you the nutrition facts. It's also really important to know that serving size really matters. So on both of the different labels, they're going to tell you what the serving size is. On the new format labels, they actually tell you the serving size is a little bit bigger. Because a lot of times you'll pick up a bag of potato chips or something, and there might be 2 or 3 servings in there. And you wouldn't think it because it's kind of a smaller bag of potato chips. And so you just eat the whole bag thinking that it's 1 serving. And in reality, it's not. Because when you're figuring out the calories, when you're figuring out the nutrition content of that food, you're going to have to double it for however many servings that you eat. So it's really important to understand serving size. A big notorious one is ice cream. I don't know anybody that eats a half a cup of ice cream, but yet that will often be the serving size for ice cream, or like I said, a bag of potato chips. When you eat a bag of potato chips, you don't usually eat just that serving size. So it's just really important to understand when you read a nutrition label that it's not just as much as you want to eat. There are serving sizes, and you need to figure out your numbers of calories and carbohydrates and fats and protein based on how many servings that you're eating. Okay, so the serving size is really important. The calories are really important. Again, calorie is a measurement of energy. If you eat too many calories, it gets stored as energy. And stored stored energy is just body fat. That's all body fat is. But if you are a person that wants to keep your body fat down, it's important to know that the calories are the main thing that you need to pay attention to. Again, a calorie is just a measurement of energy. And so those calories will be for each serving size. So again, it's really important to notice what the serving size is. Then it will give you total fat. And again, the G is for grams. So when you figured out how many grams of fat you either need to eat per meal or per day, then you can figure out, you can look at a nutrition label and see exactly where that fits in what your requirements are. Same thing, if you go down a little bit further, you'll see cholesterol and sodium. I did not have you figure that out, but the carbohydrates and the proteins I did. And so again, this label, again, example is 37 grams of carbohydrates. And then you go down a little bit further and it'll have 3 grams of protein. So when you have those numbers, you can figure out exactly how any food that you're eating can fit into your diet. And again, for food that is fresh and food that is not labeled, you can look it up. Remember the Google thing. You can Google it and you'll probably get something that looks like this. So you can get a nutrition label come up on the internet that is for food that's, when you're buying it, it's not even labeled, but you can easily find out this information now about any food. So if you're eating a meal that has a lot of different ingredients in it, you can figure it out. You can say, oh, okay, there was a cup of pasta in here. What is this cup of pasta in terms of nutrition? Or what is say you have a spaghetti dinner, what is the spaghetti sauce? What is the meat that went in it? And you can just figure it out piece by piece pretty easily and count up those grams and look at it for serving size. Okay, so what I want you to do then is that I want you to figure out, again, for your calories, your carbohydrates, your fats, and your proteins for every meal that you eat. So I'm going to ask you to write down, day 1, meal 1, and I want you to list the ingredients of what was in it. And then I want you to figure out total calories, carbohydrates in grams, fats in grams, and proteins in grams. And you can figure that for each meal, however you eat your meal. Some people don't eat 3 meals a day. On the worksheet, I had you, I put space for 3 meals a day. I'm not saying that you need to eat 3 meals a day at all. Some people snack all day long, and that's fine. I was just trying to give you something that might be usable. If you snack all day, just write it down however you need to do it and figure it out. There is a place for snack or additional food. But again, so it's really important because when we figured out your nutrition plan, right, that's going to fit you, for your lifestyle, and for your goals, we figured out these things: calories, carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. Now you know how to read a food label, so you should be able to figure out all of those things that are going in your body for every food that you're consuming. Again, the ones that aren't labeled, you can easily look up on the internet, and you can begin to figure it out. So from there, then you can create plans that actually will meet what your requirements are. So say you like a certain type of food. Well, let's look it up. Wow, okay, this bowl of Rice Krispies has this many carbohydrates in it. Wow, I didn't know that much. And so I'm going to look at the milk I'm putting on it. Oh, that's 4% milk, but 4% milk is really a little over 50% milk. So it's higher in my fat grams. And so now I've kind of got high fat grams and high carbohydrates. That's okay because I have the whole day to work with. But let's look at what the protein is now. And again, it's all a balancing act. So what I want you to do now, this is just going to take some investigation and some really looking up, getting on the internet, looking at food labels and seeing how they fit in your diet. So start with foods that you like and try to figure out how they fit. And then you might find out that you need to take some things off. It's easy to begin then to start manipulating the things that you're eating so you can begin to match those math. So you can begin to match the numbers, the mathematical numbers that we came out for calories. So what I want you to do is I want you to figure out menus for 3 days with foods that are going to match what your own requirements are in calories, in carbohydrates, in fats, and proteins. So now this time I'm not asking you to write down what you're already eating. I'm asking you to create menus that are going to match what your requirements should be. Okay, which is a whole different thing. So you're going to have to do a lot of investigating and just looking up foods. I would start with foods that you like. Start with foods that you like and see where they fit in. And then it's like, oh, okay, maybe I need to add in with a little more protein. Well, what was protein? Now, I remember from the nutrition lecture that it was, fat or protein or dairy, meat or dairy products, or, some beans, and so I'm going to look up some of those things that I like and see where they fit in. So it's going to be just a big, like I said, kind of investigation for you of just looking up different foods. Look up the foods that you eat, look how they fit in, and then see how you need to supplement for other foods. Okay, so now let's really talk about the real world, right? When we start going to fast foods, or we start going to restaurants, or we're doing takeout now because of COVID, it is now a law, and this didn't used to be true either. It is now a law that restaurants need to provide you with nutritional information. And again, all over the internet, you have all kinds of sites that will give you nutritional information from different restaurants, and so that the information is out there. It used to be much harder to find. You had to walk around with a little book and look at it all the time, and now it's pretty easy to find. So in any restaurant, they need to be able to provide you with the nutritional information. And so, and again, you can get on the internet. So you can begin to even write down if you're going to In-N-Out. Sorry, I pick on In-N-Out a lot. One reason is because I really like In-N-Out. In-N-Out used to be kind of a staple in my family. But I figured out that if I go to In-N-Out and I eat a hamburger, but I take off the spread, and I know everybody cringes because that's really the reason why they like In-N-Out, but if I take off the spread, I'm saving half the calories. And I can take something that was really a pretty high-fat food that wouldn't fit very well in my diet, and take off the spread and put on ketchup instead, and it fits pretty well. So I've taken, a pretty heavily fat and high calorie food and cut half the calories out, and now it's something that I can be able to eat, not all the time, but something that I can be able to eat in still be in a dietary range that is good for me. Okay, there used to be this, I know things changed a lot, but there used to be this thing at Burger King, and it was like a grilled chicken sandwich, and it just had a ton of mayonnaise on it, and it had 26 grams of fat in it. And if you've, again, done your numbers, you know that that's a lot of fat. And for me, that was a lot of fat because I only require about 8 per meal. So that one sandwich had almost more fat than I needed in a whole day. But if I took off the mayonnaise off of that sandwich, it brought it down to 6 grams of fat. And so it was actually a really healthy choice for me. It was high in protein, and it was, if I took the mayonnaise off, it was pretty low in fat. So there's a way to navigate even fast food restaurants. There's ways to navigate restaurants. There's ways to navigate very easily looking at the real world, right? One of my favorite things to do is now, because so many places do have calorie content available, I just kind of like to guess, because this is, obviously been my vocation for a long time, and I'm pretty passionate about it. But I like to guess and then see if I'm right or wrong. But it's really interesting to be able to kind of guess and see what certain things have, but then also be able to manipulate it in a way that you might be surprised that something is, you might think something is a far better choice than you thought, or you might find out that something that you thought was a really bad choice isn't really all that bad after all. So look at that stuff. Some of this, there's some really cool apps out there. So now I'm like really talking real world. How do you do it with takeout? How do you do it with fast food? There are some really cool apps out there that you can just plug in the food, and it'll all there. You've got so many restaurant stuff already programmed in that they can tell you what it is. There are barcode readers that you can actually just scan a barcode, and it will take all the information from the barcode as far as the nutrition label goes and put it in the app. So it can really lead you through the process. It's really very cool. There's an app called MyPlate. There's an app called MyFitnessPal. There's the best one that I really like for losing weight is an app called Lose It. Weight Watchers has one. There's a lot of really, really, really cool apps out there that will actually count up all this stuff for you. And you can just program it in either because it's programmed with so many different restaurants or fast foods, or again, it will read barcodes. You can program the stuff in from nutrition. They have a whole database already plugged in. So that gets to be really easy. But again, I didn't want to jump right into the apps because you need to know how this stuff works. If you're going to be professionals in this field, you can't just, assume that the app is going to do it, but you have no idea what the whole rationale behind how to figure out an appropriate diet goes. So this what we've done so far is really trying to figure out how you figure out an appropriate diet, and then how you even break it down into foods that will work for you in creating menu plans that will be able to keep you for your goals. So again, what you're going to do is you're doing a nutrition menu plan for yourself, and you start out with your calories. And again, you found this out from last week, right? The calories that you need per day, the carbohydrates that you need per day, the protein that you need per day, and the fat grams that you need per day. And then what I want you to do is I want you to create a meal plan that matches those, right? So tell me what the ingredients are in the meals that you're going to eat, or tell me what, if it's of already packaged food, write it down, and then tell me the totals for that meal of calories, carbohydrates, proteins, and fat. So you're just going to create meals. I want you to just, like I said, you're just going to do some investigation, get on the internet, get out some of those apps, and just really find out foods that fit for you that are going to match those numbers. So then your goal is to count up all 3 meals plus any snacks that you might have, and then and hopefully have them match as close as you can to the calories, carbohydrates, and proteins that you need per day. Now, is it going to be exact? No, but within a range. It really needs to be within a specific range. So this is how you figure out what you should be eating, because that's the hardest part for people, right? They get a nutrition lesson, but it still doesn't sink in. So what does this really mean for me? What does this really mean in the real world when I'm going to put something in my mouth? What does that look like? And so this is how you figure out how you would plan that out. And then after you do this for yourself, you're going to go back and you're going to do this for your fictitious client, because again, your fictitious client may be way different than you. So you may be working with somebody that, is an older person, or they want to lose so much weight, or they're very inactive. And we're going to figure out, again, you should already have from last week their daily needs in terms of calories, carbohydrates, protein, and fat. And you're going to figure out menus for them to eat at each meal that match those statistics. And one more thing I want you to do for yourself before you go into your client sheet is, once you get the numbers of that menu, I want you to go back and I want you to look at what you got on your nutrition log when you analyzed your nutrition log, and just look and see how close the numbers are. And just at the very end, I just want you to kind of reflect on that a little bit. So when I had you do the nutrition log, you wrote down everything that you were eating, and then you came back 2 weeks later and analyzed that for calories, carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. And now I want you to compare those numbers with what you actually need that you got last week, and then figure out how that kind of all fits in with the menus that you're creating for yourself. So again, homework, you're going to create 3 days of eating plans for yourself that match your nutritional requirements and compare to your nutrition log analysis. And then you're going to create 3 days of eating plans for your fictitious client that matches their nutritional requirements and their goals. And again, you're going to turn those in. And then you're also going to do your wellness activities and your behavior change or your behavior change activities and turn in a summary of that. So your deliverables, again, are going to be your health, your menu plan for yourself, your menu plan for your client, your the quiz that you're going to take after you do the readings and listen to the content video, and then your wellness activities. So have a good week. See you next time around.